Merry Christmas! I'm Emily Garrison and welcome to Around the World in 80 Bottles. We are going to finish up in Georgia before we go back to Europe, and because it's the week of Christmas and so many of us are having family and friends over, I thought we would do an apple pie. A lot of times people are afraid to make their own pies, but it's really very simple as long as you know how to do it. So I'm going to walk you through it, and what we're going to do today, instead of doing a basic apple pie, we're going to mix it up by doing a cheddar cheese crust for it, which all we're doing is adding one ingredient, but it makes it a little more savory. If you're not a huge dessert person, this is a nice bridge between the sweet and savory. And on that note, we're actually going to pair it with a Tawny Port this week, which is a dessert wine, but it's more of a nutty style and it's not going to be too sweet. So it's a great way to end a meal and end the year. So let's start with our crust. This is a very, very basic crust. All we've got in it is flour, and this can be self-rising or unbleached. It does not make any difference at all. We're going to use Dubliner cheese, and I actually chopped this up a little more finely for the crust, and this is our food item this week, so we're going to have some Dubliner for you. If you kept a little bit of your Kerrygold butter, that's what I use because I really like their butter, but as long as you have a stick of butter, you're in good shape. We're going to use a little bit of water. It's the only other ingredient, because when you're pulsing that for a short bit in your food processor, you just want to add enough water to make sure the dough holds together. And let's talk about how we assemble that pie crust. So we've rolled out our crust, and it's just a nice thin consistency, and I actually didn't do it by a certain thickness, but this looks like it's about 1/4 inch. The idea here is to make sure that it fits the pie crust, the pie tin. And I've got a 9-inch pie tin. Now here's a little idea for you. When you're trying to transport your pie crust, this is really hard to do if you try to lift the whole thing. So I fold it in half and then I fold it again, and all you have to do is lay that out into your pie tin, which is a lot easier and at the same time much harder to break. So I've rolled this out a little bit more. It's about a 10 or 11-inch roll. You can kind of see my crease there, but you're not going to see it once we cook it. And then we're going to fill it, and then we're going to do the exact same thing with our top crust. We're just going to lay that on top. So I'm going to put this to the side, and then we're going to use our filling. And the filling is really, really simple. I like to use a little bit of cornmeal, polenta, anything you have like that on the bottom, and just sprinkle a tiny bit. This is going to keep everything from soaking through, and it'll keep your crust nice and crisp as you bake. And then we're going to layer the apples. And once again, this is very, very simple. We've got red and green apples, and I'm going to do a quick layer of green and then a layer of red, and then I'm going to sprinkle our sugar mixture, which is just those spices and a little bit of sugar. So the spices and sugar together keep it from being too sweet overall. After all, we're not using much sugar anyway. So I'm going to do one layer of green, one layer of red, and then we're going to sprinkle it with the spices, and then we're going to repeat until our crust is full. Now, we've been standing here with the camera, so my apples are turning just a tiny bit brown, which reminds me to tell you that what you can do is soak your apples in a combination of lemon juice and water, and that will keep them from getting too brown. It's not going to matter a whole lot once you cook it, but it's always nice when the apples look the prettiest. We've got some really good apples in Georgia this time of year, so that's why I picked an apple tart to do. Let's see. Then we're just going to sprinkle a little bit. Oh, and you know what? I added a little bit of 5-spice powder and nutmeg, and this smells great, and we hadn't even cooked it, so I think it's going to be the perfect balance with our sweet apples. And we're going to do that. We're just going to continue to do that until this is full. And as you can see, all we've done is layer them again and again. And each layer has the sugar mixture. And then we've got our last piece of crust. And it doesn't matter if you have a couple holes in it, because we're actually going to have to cut a couple holes in it. So we're going to cut a couple slits there in the top. It's just going to let it steam a little bit. And then we're going to brush it with an egg wash. And if you have any sugar left over, feel free to put that on the top. That's what I'm going to do. I hate waste. So we're just going to pinch that a little bit. Don't worry if your pie is not perfect. Nobody cares if it looks perfect. They care if it's delicious. Plus, you can tell it's homemade when it doesn't look absolutely perfect. I'm actually kind of proud of my imperfections when it comes to pies, because people don't think that I went and bought it at the store. So we've got our one egg that we beat earlier. I'm going to brush it. This is actually going to give it that, see, it doesn't matter that my crust isn't perfect, because it's going to taste delicious and it's going to have this nice gloss to it from the egg. If you want, if you really are a perfectionist, if you want to, you can brush some of this at those corners when you seal the pie crust, make it a little more perfect. I really do think it's much more important that it tastes good. And I don't think this is bad looking, it's just not perfect. Okay, and if you have any of that sugar left over, feel free to sprinkle that on the top. That's really going to give it a nice sheen. That'll give it that little bakery touch. Well, if it tastes as good as it smells, I think we're going to be really happy when this comes out of the oven in 45 minutes. I'm going to put it in and see how it looks when it comes out. My pie just came out of the oven, and the entire aroma in this house is now apples and cheese, which is not a bad thing. We've got this very, very golden brown color from our sugar on top and our egg wash. And this is going to be perfect with the Tawny Port that we've got with it. There you go. Nice layered pie. So now we can really test it and see if it's as good as it smells. It's hot. The cheddar cheese adds so much to the apples and really does make this a great combination of sweet and savory. I think any of you who are like me and don't eat a lot of sweets are really going to love this. And I don't think you can go overboard on the cheddar at all. We put a little bit extra in there because I got a little excited making this, and it really adds so much flavor. I hope you'll enjoy that with your great little Tawny Port as a wonderful way to spend some time with friends and family over the holiday season. Please join us next week on Around the World in 80 Bottles. I'm Emily Garrison. Cheers!